let's see if I remember how to do this. Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Michelle. This is Michelle Reads YA. It's been a while since I've done this. I am in a new setup, so this video is going to be half life update, half recent reads. From my last video was my January wrap up, so this is reads from February to May. It is not a ton because of circumstances, so let's start. After I filmed my January wrap-up, we had an ice storm and a tree hit my house. So we were all okay, but it damaged our kitchen ceiling and the library, so I was unable to film in the library, and then we packed up my camera and laptop because workers were in and out of my house. Okay, so that happened. And then I was pregnant. I was 8 months pregnant when the tree fell, so I just didn't have really a lot of motivation. I've had my baby, he's great, so I am back to reading and have motivation to do things again. And then lastly, we moved, so because of the tree, we were very concerned about the other trees in my backyard, so we decided to leave. So we are in a new house, in a new build, in a new city, so that's it. So this is all new. So that's it. Okay, so let's get started on my recent reads. I'm gonna go through them pretty fast because it's been a long time since I've read some of them, and also because I don't want this video to be super long. So I'm gonna tell you what I read and basically the star rating that I've given it, and that's about it. So the first book that I read that I have not talked about, well, I'm just gonna do two of these. I read The Elite and The One by Kiera Cass. At some point in January, I read The Selection, and it was still great, and I still stand by the series. It's not groundbreaking, it's not life-changing. However, it's very enjoyable. So I felt like The Elite was so messy but still enjoyable, so I give this 4 stars, and The One I gave 5 stars. But I think I said in my Goodreads review that if you're not paying attention to the ending, you're going to miss everything. So I remember that from the first time I read it, and really paid attention to the end, because there's a lot of stuff that happens very quickly. So yeah, so these were good rereads. I listened to the audiobooks. The next book that I read and DNF'd was a buddy read with my friend Jordan, and that is Darius the Great Is Not Okay by Adib Khorram. I had read so many rave reviews about this book, and I did not like it at all. And it was the writing for me. I listened to the audiobook, and it was first person, which is what I want in a contemporary, but this Darius was so awkward. And in my Goodreads review, I mentioned that if I hear Darius say 3 more times, I'm going to DNF it, and he said 3 times in less than 10 minutes. So it was not for me. The writing was absolutely not good. So I know a lot of people like this. I know a lot of people like the sequel. It was not for me. It was also not for my friend Jordan. He didn't like it either. I think he finished it, and I decided I was not going to finish it. So the next book that I read and DNF'd was The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I don't think that I am a fan of Jennifer Lynn Barnes to begin with, but I heard really good things about this book. I had read her first book in the Naturals series and thought it was okay, but never had the willpower to just keep going because it was just okay. So when I heard really good things about The Inheritance Games, I was like, oh, absolutely, I'm gonna love this, because people were comparing it to Knives Out, which I didn't love, but I know a lot of other people did. So I just felt like it was slow and I didn't care. And also I will say that I was pregnant and grumpy, so, but I don't think I'm going to go back and try to reread that. Yeah. Next book that I listened to was on the Come Up by Angie Thomas. I was supposed to read this like 2 years ago for book club, but instead I had my first baby, so it just fell on the back burner. But it was available through my library and like didn't have a hold, and I was very excited. I ended up giving this 3 stars. So I definitely did not like this as much as The Hate You Give, which, you know, has a very high bar. But I just felt like there were like 3 main storylines with this. It was her rapping, and then her like family situation, especially with her aunt, and then the like whole security guard thing at school. And I just felt like the 3 storylines didn't really mesh for me. I had an enjoyable time listening to it. I love the narrator, but like overall the story was just like meh. So that's okay. I'm glad I finally listened to it because I love Angie Thomas and I thought the audiobook was great. But other than that, I just like, it wasn't like very cohesive for me with the 3 storylines. And then the next book that I listened to, which was great, was Concrete Rose by Angie Thomas. And this is the prequel to The Hate You Give. So this is the story of Maverick Star's father. And I really liked it because things happen in Concrete Rose you already know happen because of The Hate You Give, but you get to like read about it firsthand, and I thought it was great. And Maverick is just like very flawed, but like a very good person. So I really like this one. I ended up giving this one 4 stars, and I don't own it. I would love to own it, so that's gonna be one to add to my collection. And then the next book that I read was More Than Maybe by Erin Hahn. I read this for book club and listened to the audiobook and can't remember a single thing about it except that like one of the characters' name is Callum, and I don't even think, no, I think it's Colin, right? Edward Cullen, right. So that's not even the main character's name. So anyway. So I don't remember much about this. I remember it's about music, there's a romance. Pretty much it was forgettable. Let me see how many stars I gave it. I gave it 2 stars because it was forgettable. So I do not recommend it. Okay. The next book that I read and DNF'd was The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune, and I would like to say that I attempted to read this before all of the stuff came out with his inspiration for the book, so this has nothing to do with this. This is just like, this book was not for me. It reminded me of Miss Peregrine's, those books by Ransom Riggs, and I, you know, like those like 5 years ago, but I don't know. We're reading this for like July or August book club. I can't even remember, but a lot of us have already read it, and one other person in my book club did not like it, and one other person absolutely loved it. So we are going to be completely split on this. I have not much to say about it because I did not finish it. So it just was not for me, and it was like too whimsical, and no. So then the next book that I read was The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. This is her first series as a solo, I think so. I know she has a middle grade book, but I believe this is her first YA book. Anyway, I read them a very, very, very long time ago when I was first getting into, like, back into reading in YA, and loved them. And so I listened to the audiobook because they're like a short 6 hours, and it holds up pretty well for being 11 years old. You know, it's not like groundbreaking writing like the Selection series. However, it just like has a warm spot in my heart. Like, I love Jenny Han. This, you know, really propelled me into YA literature. So are they groundbreaking? No. Are they cute? Yes. Is Belly annoying? Yes. I decided to pick this up because it was announced that I think Amazon is turning this into a TV series. So, and she's writing it. So I'm very excited. Very, very, very excited. The next book that I read and DNF'd was Game Changer by Neil Shusterman. And let me say, I listened to almost all of this audiobook and just thought, this has got to get better. I love a lot of his books. It has to get better than this, right? And it never got better. And so I listened to 72% of this audiobook and then finally just decided to DNF it. What I remember is that this guy is a football player and he gets a concussion and then he's like transported into like alternate realities of his life. And that's it. That's all I remember. Okay. The next book that I read for book club was Damsel by Elena K. Arnold. I have read one other book by Elena K. Arnold. I think it's called What Girls Are Made Of, and did not like it. And I read Damsel and did not like it. It's a very short audiobook and I flew through it, but like did not enjoy my time listening to it at all. I did love the ending. The last 10 minutes, brilliant. But like to get up to the last 10 minutes was just like a struggle for me. And I like to, if I can, finish book club books because I like to talk about them, but like I didn't have much to say about this one because I just like didn't enjoy my time listening to it. So that's that. Okay, the next book that I read was a saga. So I got the arc of this and DNF the arc, and it's probably half pregnancy related and half like the book, let's be honest. But that's Take Me Home Tonight by Morgan Matson. Morgan Matson is my favorite YA contemporary author, so I was super bummed when I decided to DNF this. And then about maybe a week or two before it came out, I decided to pick it up again, like right where I left off, right in the middle of it, and start again, and ended up finishing it. Gave it 3 stars, so it wasn't amazing. It wasn't absolutely definitely not my favorite, but I don't think it was my least favorite either. My least favorite is still Save the Date. And these are her last 2. Save the Date came out before Take Me Home Tonight, and I just feel like, I don't know, is it me? Is it her? I don't know. But Save the Date and Take Me Home Tonight have like the, if anything, like everything that happens is bad kind of trope, like the main characters like can't catch a break, and it's just not working for me. And this was the same thing and it just didn't like blow me away. So I bought it, I have it, but I'm disappointed. Okay. The next book that I listened to was This World We Live In by Susan Beth Pfeffer. This is the last, I don't actually think it's the last, but it's the 3rd in a series, and this was so depressing. I also don't think that it was a necessary addition to the series, and I will not be listening to the last one because I just don't care. And let me say that both of the other books were very depressing, but this one just like was worse. It was so depressing. So I don't recommend it if you are in a bad place, or if you're listening to it during a global pandemic. Like, it's not the time for these books. So no. The next book that I read was an arc that I was very excited about, and that's If This Gets Out by Sophie Gonzalez and Cal Dietrich. And this is the story loosely, I'm gonna just say it's loosely based on Larry from One Direction, and that is why I wanted the arc. So I'm a very big One Direction fan, still am, don't care. Okay, so this is about 2 members of a boy band. One is gay, but he's not allowed to come out, and the other one is exploring his sexuality, and they get together, and it's about the management of the band holding them back. And it was very reminiscent of 2013 One Direction. I was there, I know it, so I loved it. I give it 4 stars. I didn't think it was perfect. It dragged in some places, so that's okay. But other than that, like, I flew through a physical book. I read it on my phone, and I haven't been able to really do that in a long time. I've been relying on audiobooks. So I think it comes out in December, and I definitely recommend it. So the next book that I listened to was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I haven't read this in like 3 years and just wanted to do it again. So I read this physically the first time and literally couldn't put it down, and I listened to it this time, and I'm glad that I read it physically the first time because the audiobook wasn't my favorite. I especially did not like Evelyn's voice, but okay, so I already knew what was gonna happen, so it didn't like take away from the story. So this was 5 stars. It's probably always going to be 5 stars, and yeah, if you haven't read this book or haven't heard about this book, I don't know where you've been, please read this book. Okay. The next book, the next two books that I listened to were It's Not Summer Without You and We'll Always Have Summer by Jenny Han. I did these back to back. It was great. I will say in the last one and in my Goodreads review, I felt like the ending is so sudden. It's like she knew what she wanted to do, but she didn't know how to write it. And I felt that way the first time, and listening to it was just exactly the same experience. So yeah, otherwise, I believe I still gave them 5 stars because nostalgia and Jenny Han and contemporary romance. Okay. The next book that I listened to, nope. The next book that I read was an arc of probably what's going to be my favorite book of 2021, and that's Instructions for Dancing by Nicola Yoon. Holy shit. So my friend from book club read this arc and was like, it was so good, it's going to destroy you. And I was like, whatever, lady. No, I was texting her and I was like, okay, I'm reading Instructions for Dancing and I really like it and I think it's going to be my favorite book of the year. And she was like, don't get attached to any of the characters, it'll break your heart. So of course I got attached to the character and it broke my heart. Like, I am a non-emotional bitch. I don't have emotions. I don't cry. I sobbed at the end of this book. It tore me apart. It was so good. And I'm still not over it, and I know that this is probably going to be my favorite book of 2021. I can just feel it. This is the story of Evie, who gives up on romance after something happens with her dad, and then she gets the magical power of when a couple kisses to see how their relationship like plays out from beginning to end. And it is so good. It's a YA contemporary with just like a sprinkle of magical realism, and I am so glad like I waited so long for another Nicola Yoon book because this is everything. It was so good, so good. Okay, so the next book that I attempted to listen to was 13 Little Blue Envelopes by Maureen Johnson. This is super old. This is like OG YA, and I made it 20% in and DNF'd it because I absolutely did not care and the writing was not good. And I can't even tell you anything about this book except that they said the Starbucks musical theater something so many times that I DNF'd it. And so, you know, that's where we are. Okay, so the next book that I listened to was Only Mostly Devastated by Sophie Gonzalez. After I read If This Gets Out by her, I wanted to read something else by her, and this one was available for audiobook, and I really liked it. I didn't realize when I was reading it until after I read the reviews that this is a Grease retelling. And it sure is. So I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. It has to do with this guy who is openly gay, and he meets this guy when he is like in North Carolina from California to help his aunt who is sick. And then he ends up staying in North Carolina and reconnects with the guy, but the guy is not out at school. Very good. Liked it a lot. Wasn't perfect. I really like Sophie Gonzalez. I'm getting her other book. Okay, so the next book that I listened to was Dear Evan Hansen by Val Emmett, etc. And I listened to this because the trailer came out for the movie with 27-year-old, what's his face, Ben Platt. So, you know. If you know, you know. And I had no idea what to expect going into this and did not like it. So I liked it a lot in the beginning. It's the story of this guy who writes letters to himself because his therapist tells him to, and then it gets into the wrong hands. It gets picked up by this other guy, and that guy ends up killing himself and has that Dear Evan Hansen note on him, and then things spiral, and it's a lot. So I liked it a lot in the beginning and then ended up hating Evan Hansen and like everyone else towards the end. So I gave this 2 stars. It was not for me. The next book that I listened to was A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This is a reread because I am on hold for Good Girl Bad Blood, which is the second one. So I wanted to reintroduce myself to this. I read this the first time and listened to the audiobook this time, and the audiobook is so good as well. So I ended up still giving this 4 stars because something happens in this book. If you haven't read it yet, I won't spoil it, but something happens that I just think is very unnecessary, and we read this for book club and everyone agreed, and I just like did not love it. So 4 stars. The next book that I read, and I read it, is Love is for Losers by Wibke Brueggemann. I don't think I'm saying that right. It's a very unusual name. But I read this for book club. It's sapphic, which is great, and it's British, which not great. I ended up giving this 3 stars. It was told in journal format, which I really like. However, I don't get British humor. I just don't. So this book dealt with very serious topics in a very light way, but I just like the jokes just went over my head. So although I think it was important, I don't think it was for me. And also the romance was so slow burn. It just I need people to tell them that they like each other 30% in, and this was literally 95% in. So, and this wasn't for me, but I did give it 3 stars. And that's it. So that's everything I read from February to the end of May. I did it. I did it. Okay, so my intention is to be back to BookTube full time. That means videos every Saturday at 10. So I am so glad to be back. I'm so glad I got my book set up. I'm so glad to be in a new library, and hopefully I can remember how to edit this. If this video makes it up, then I did. Thanks for watching my video. See you in my next one. Bye!